A German shepherd, once celebrated for his loyalty and courage, now lies despondent. Spirit, a 10-year-old dog, refuses to eat, his once lively energy seemingly drained away. Day after day, the shelter staff does their best to help him, but their efforts feel futile. Yet, a familiar voice from his past might hold the key to bringing him back to life. A voice he hasn't heard in years. This is a story about the deep, unshakable connection between humans and their canine companions. A tale of hope, love, and redemption. Before we dive into this heartfelt journey, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and turn on notifications. Your support allows us to share more inspiring stories like this one. The Montana Canine Rescue Center was a sanctuary for dogs rescued from neglect, abuse, or the harsh realities of life on the streets. Its spacious yards stretched across the landscape, lined with secure enclosures, each representing a fresh start. Dogs of every breed and size roamed freely, their coats glistening in the afternoon sun. But Spirit, the center's most well-known resident, stood apart, not because of his imposing presence, but because of his eerie stillness. At 10 years old, Spirit was one of the oldest dogs in the shelter. Once a beacon of strength and resilience, he was now but a shell of his former self. His lean frame and vacant eyes told a silent tale of sorrow that no one could quite decipher. The staff had tried everything to reignite his will. Fresh kibble, special treats, even his favorite chew toy, but Spirit remained indifferent. Days turned into weeks, and with each passing moment, his once powerful body seemed to weaken even further. Emma, the shelter's manager, leaned against the chain-link fence, concern etched across her face as she watched Spirit from a distance. "It's been over a week," she murmured, her voice laced with worry. "He hasn't touched a bite." Her assistant, Cole, approached with a bowl of chicken and rice. "Maybe this will do the trick," he suggested, though the uncertainty in his voice was clear. Emma carefully stepped into Spirit's enclosure, placing the bowl gently on the ground a few feet away. "Hey, buddy," she said softly, "we've got something special for you." But Spirit didn't respond. His once attentive ears now drooped, and his strong legs, which had once carried him through countless adventures, barely supported his weight. "He's given up," Cole said, leaning on the fence with a heavy sigh. "It's like he's already decided he's done." Emma's heart ached for the once vibrant German shepherd. She sat with him for hours, hoping he'd take even the smallest bite, but he remained still, lost in his own world. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the yard, Emma finally retreated to her office, her mind racing with unanswered questions. That evening, Emma sat at her desk, sifting through a pile of old records and adoption files. She combed through every detail of Spirit's history, searching for anything that could explain his sudden change. The shelter had taken him in 5 years ago, but his past went back much further. He had been rescued as a young pup, trained as a working dog, and passed between several owners before eventually ending up in different shelters. As she flipped through the pages, an old photograph slipped out of one of the folders. She picked it up and examined it closely. A younger Spirit, his coat thick and shiny, sitting beside a boy with a bright smile and tousled hair. They looked inseparable, a perfect team. Scribbled beneath the image were the words, "Spirit and Ethan, 2013. "Who's Ethan?" Emma wondered aloud, holding the photo closer. Just then, Cole walked into the office. He glanced at the picture and shrugged. "Never heard of him," he said, leaning over the desk for a better look. "But he sure looks like someone important. Maybe Spirit belonged to him?" Emma studied the photo in silence, feeling an undeniable connection between the boy and the dog. Something about it stirred a deep emotion within her. Could Ethan be the missing piece to Spirit's sorrow? She made up her mind. "I'm going to find him," she declared with quiet determination. "If Ethan meant that much to Spirit back then, maybe he can help him now," Emma said, her voice filled with hope. Cole nodded, though skepticism clouded his expression. "Do you really think it'll matter after all these years?" Emma glanced from the photo in her hand to the kennel outside, where Spirit lay motionless under the dim glow of the moon. "Dogs never forget," she murmured. "And if there's even the slightest chance we can help him, it's worth it." As the shelter lights flickered off for the night, Emma began her search for the boy in the photograph. Little did she know, her efforts would set off a chain of events that would change everything. The next morning, the shelter was bathed in a soft golden glow as Emma made her way back to Spirit's kennel. The German Shepherd remained in the same spot as the day before, his head resting on his paws, eyes distant and dull. It was as if the world around him no longer mattered. Other dogs barked and played in their enclosures, occasionally casting glances toward the silent figure in the corner. Emma felt an urgent need to act. Clutching the photograph of Spirit and Ethan tightly, she hurried to the office. "There's something we're missing in his past," she said as she entered, finding Cole already at his desk. He looked up from his laptop. "Did you find anything new last night?" Emma handed him the picture. This Spirit had a deep connection with someone named Ethan. "Just look at how happy he looks here. It's nothing like the way he is now." Cole studied the image closely, his brow furrowing. "That kid must have been really important. But it's been over a decade. Where do we even start looking for him?" "I'll start with the records," Emma replied, determination hardening her tone. "If Ethan ever registered Spirit or brought him to a vet, there might be a trail." Hours passed as Emma sifted through old files and databases. She pieced together fragments of Spirit's journey, his rescue from an abusive home, his brief stay at a training facility, and his eventual arrival at the shelter. Yet, there was no mention of Ethan. Frustration gnawed at her, but she refused to give up. It wasn't until late afternoon that she stumbled upon a breakthrough. A veterinary record from 2013 listing Ethan Whitaker as Spirit's owner during a routine checkup. Emma's heart leapt. Grabbing her phone, she quickly searched for the name. After a few dead ends, she found a possible match. A man in his early 30s living just 2 hours away in Billings, Montana. "This has to be him," she said, her voice a mix of excitement and anxiety. Cole peered over her shoulder. "Are you sure it's the same Ethan?" Emma hesitated for a moment before shaking her head. "I can't be certain, but it's our best shot." Without wasting another second, she dialed the number listed on the profile. The phone rang several times before a male voice finally answered. "Hello. Hi. Is this Ethan Whitaker?" Emma asked, her words tumbling out in a rush. "My name is Emma, and I manage the Montana Canine Rescue Center. I'm calling about a German Shepherd named Spirit." A long pause followed. When Ethan finally spoke, his voice was thick with emotion. "Spirit? He's alive?" "Yes," Emma replied, relief washing over her. "He's been with us for a few years now, but he's not doing well. He's refusing to eat, and I think he's given up hope." Ethan's voice wavered. "I thought I'd lost him forever. He was my best friend when I was a teenager." "What happened to him?" Emma explained how Spirit had passed through several homes and shelters before arriving at their facility. "Lately, he's been shutting down," she finished. "But when I found this photo of you two, I thought reconnecting with you might help him." "I'll be there right away," Ethan said without hesitation. "I owe him that much." As Emma ended the call, a sense of cautious optimism filled the office. "He's coming," she told Cole, her voice steady. "Let's hope Spirit remembers him." Later that evening, Emma stood by the kennel, watching Spirit under the starlit sky. For the first time in days, a glimmer of hope stirred within her. Ethan's return might just be the turning point Spirit so desperately needed. The following morning, a quiet buzz of anticipation filled the rescue center. Emma had informed the staff about Ethan's upcoming visit, and everyone was eager to see if this man from Spirit's past could truly bring him back to life. The shelter had seen countless heartwarming reunions, but the weight of this moment felt different. Emma stepped outside as the first rays of sunlight painted the sky in hues of orange and pink. Spirit lay in his usual spot, still and distant, his gaze fixed on nothing in particular. The crisp morning air carried the soft rustling of nearby trees, adding a quiet serenity to the scene. "Good morning, boy," Emma murmured, leaning against the chain-link fence. Her mind raced with questions. Would Spirit remember Ethan? Would their connection still hold strong after all these years? Before she could dwell too long, the sound of tires crunching on gravel pulled her attention to the driveway. A dusty blue pickup truck rolled to a stop, and a man in his early 30s stepped out. His expression was a mix of nerves and anticipation, his hands wiping against his worn jeans. His hair was slightly unkempt, and his eyes scanned the shelter anxiously until they landed on the far corner where Spirit lay. "Ethan," Emma called, approaching him with a reassuring smile. He nodded in acknowledgement, but his gaze remained locked on the enclosure. "Is that him?" he asked softly, his voice laced with emotion. Emma placed a gentle hand on his arm. "That's Spirit. He's been struggling, but I have a feeling he's been waiting for you." Ethan took a deep breath, his steps slow and cautious as he moved closer to the fence. Each step seemed to take him deeper into the past, memories of their adventures together, the countless afternoons spent running side by side, and the quiet nights when Spirit had been his greatest confidant. "Spirit," Ethan called out gently, his voice trembling. "It's me." First, there was no response. Spirit remained still, his ears drooping, his head resting against his paws. Ethan stepped closer, gripping the fence with both hands. "Do you remember me, buddy?" Emma and Cole stood nearby, watching with bated breath. The other dogs, usually lively and restless, were unusually silent, as if sensing the significance of the moment. Then, a flicker of recognition. Spirit's ears twitched, slowly turning toward Ethan's voice. Gradually, the German shepherd lifted his head, his dark eyes meeting Ethan's. For a moment, time seemed to freeze. "It's me, Spirit," Ethan whispered, tears welling in his eyes. "I've missed you so much." Spirit took a cautious step forward, his nose quivering as he sniffed the air. Ethan reached out a trembling hand, and Spirit inched closer, pressing his muzzle against Ethan's palm. A soft whimper escaped from deep within the dog's chest, the first sound he had made in days. Emma felt a lump form in her throat. Cole muttered under his breath, "I've never seen anything like this." Ethan gently ran his hand over Spirit's head, his voice thick with emotion. "You were always there for me when I needed you. I'm so sorry I wasn't there for you." Spirit leaned into him, the sadness that had weighed him down slowly melting away. A flicker of his old self emerged, as if their reunion had reignited a spark inside him. For hours, Ethan remained by Spirit's side, talking to him, brushing his coat, and offering food by hand. For the first time in days, Spirit ate, his appetite slowly returning under the gentle care of his long-lost friend. The shelter staff watched in quiet awe, their hearts warmed by the sight of a bond that had withstood the test of time. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ethan leaned against the fence, watching Spirit contentedly munch on his kibble. "Thank you for calling me," he said, turning to Emma. "I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't come." Emma smiled, her heart full. "It's not just Spirit you saved today. You reminded all of us why we do this work." The days that followed were nothing short of remarkable. Spirit's transformation had begun, slowly but surely. His posture straightened, his appetite grew stronger, and the light in his eyes, once extinguished, now held a faint but unmistakable glow. Ethan decided to stay at the shelter for a few days, unwilling to leave Spirit's side. He spent every moment with him, grooming him, taking him on short walks around the yard, and simply sitting with him, speaking in soft tones. The bond between them was undeniable, a testament to the power of love and loyalty. "You've got a natural way with him," Emma said one morning, watching Ethan work with Spirit. Ethan smiled faintly, his hand resting gently on Spirit's back. "He was always there for me," he said quietly. "I think I owe him my best." Emma nodded, sensing the weight behind his words. Over the years, she had seen many people come through the sanctuary carrying silent burdens, finding solace in the animals they cared for. She didn't push Ethan to share more, understanding that healing, much like Spirit's recovery, was a gradual process. As the days passed, Spirit's strength grew, but so did the challenges. One afternoon, Ethan decided it was time to lead Spirit into the larger exercise yard for the first time. The German shepherd hesitated at the open gate, his body tensing and his ears pinned back. It was clear that the wide, unfamiliar space triggered something deep inside him. "It's okay, boy," Ethan murmured, his voice steady and soothing. "You're safe now." Spirit let out a nervous whimper, shifting his weight uneasily. Ethan remained calm, his grip on the leash firm but reassuring. From a distance, Emma watched anxiously, her hands clenched. "Do you think he'll go?" Cole asked, standing beside her. Emma sighed. "Not today, but Ethan knows what he's doing. He's patient, and that's what Spirit needs." After what felt like an eternity of gentle coaxing, Spirit finally took a tentative step forward. Ethan didn't rush him, allowing the dog to explore at his own pace. Slowly, they made their way to the center of the yard, where Spirit finally relaxed enough to sniff the grass curiously. Ethan let out a relieved chuckle, kneeling beside him. "You did it," he whispered, stroking Spirit's fur. "We did it, but progress wasn't without setbacks." One evening, a sudden thunderstorm rolled in, lightning flashing across the sky and thunder rumbling ominously in the distance. The shelter erupted in chaos, with dogs barking anxiously and pawing at their enclosures. Emma and the staff hurried to secure everything, but Spirit's anxiety quickly spiraled out of control. He paced frantically in his kennel, his eyes wide with fear. His claws scraped against the door as he whined, his whole body trembling. Ethan arrived, soaked from the rain, his face etched with concern. Hey, it's okay," he said gently, stepping into the kennel. He placed a steady hand on Spirit's back, his voice calm despite the storm raging outside. "I'm here." Spirit's ragged breathing gradually slowed as Ethan continued to speak softly, his tone unwavering. It took nearly an hour, but eventually, Spirit settled, his tense body relaxing against Ethan's side as the storm passed. When the skies cleared, Emma found Ethan still sitting in the kennel, his back against the wall, Spirit curled up beside him. "You didn't have to stay in there," she said softly. Ethan shrugged with a tired smile. "He stayed with me through worse. It's the least I can do." It was in that moment Emma realized that Ethan's connection with Spirit ran deeper than she had imagined. Their bond wasn't just companionship. It was a shared story of pain, resilience, and unwavering loyalty. By the end of the week, Spirit was running freely in the yard, his steps lighter and his spirit rekindled. Ethan, too, seemed different, less weighed down, as if his time with Spirit had mended an old wound. "You've done something amazing," Emma told Ethan one morning as they watched Spirit trot across the yard, tail wagging and eyes bright. "Not just for him, but for all of us." Ethan's gaze remained fixed on Spirit, a small smile tugging at his lips. "He saved me first. I'm just returning the favor." The shelter buzzed with excitement over Spirit's progress. His coat had regained its shine, his energy levels had returned, and the spark in his eyes was undeniable. Just as it seemed everything was finally falling into place, an unexpected challenge arrived. It was a crisp morning when Emma noticed a stranger standing at the entrance to the shelter. A man in his late 40s, dressed in a tailored suit and holding a sleek leather briefcase, stood with an air of authority. His sharp gaze met hers as she approached. "Good morning," he said, extending a hand. "My name is Thomas Avery. I'm here regarding Spirit." Emma's stomach twisted with unease. "What about him?" she asked, her voice wary. Thomas opened his briefcase, pulling out a neat stack of legal documents. "I represent a private estate that claims legal ownership of Spirit. According to these records, he was part of a property sale several years ago and was never officially transferred to this shelter. We're here to reclaim him." Emma felt the air leave her lungs. "Reclaim him? Spirit is a rescue. He's been with us for years." Thomas adjusted his glasses, his expression cool and unwavering. "I understand that, Ms. Carter, but legally he still belongs to his previous owner." "I understand your concerns," Thomas said, his voice measured and professional, "but the estate has documentation proving ownership. I'm afraid you'll need to comply and release him into our custody." Ethan's face flushed with anger, his fists clenched at his sides. "You can't take him," he said, his voice trembling. "Spirit isn't just a dog, he's family." Thomas remained unmoved, his expression neutral. "I'm only doing my job, Mr. Whitaker. If you have any paperwork that disputes our claim, I suggest you present it." Ethan turned to Emma, desperation flickering in his eyes. "There has to be something we can do," he pleaded. Emma nodded, determination hardening her features. "We'll fight this, Ethan. Spirit isn't going anywhere without a fight." The days that followed were a whirlwind of legal consultations, paperwork, and mounting tension. Emma and Ethan worked tirelessly to gather evidence of Spirit's rescue, combing through old files and reaching out to anyone who had been involved in his past. The shelter staff rallied behind them, their devotion to Spirit fueling their efforts. Meanwhile, Spirit seemed to sense the unease that had settled over the shelter. He grew restless, pacing his kennel and letting out soft whimpers whenever Ethan was nearby. It was as if he understood the weight of what was happening. One evening, as the sun cast a golden hue over the shelter, Ethan leaned against Spirit's kennel, his hand gently stroking the German shepherd's fur. "I won't let them take you," he whispered, his voice thick with emotion. "Not after everything we've been through." Spirit nuzzled into Ethan's touch, his warm breath a silent reassurance. In that moment, Ethan realized how much Spirit had given him. Lessons of resilience, loyalty, and the unshakable bond they shared. The breakthrough came late one night when Emma stumbled upon a crucial document. A transfer of ownership form from Spirit's previous shelter to the current one, signed, but never officially processed. It wasn't perfect, but it was enough to challenge the estate's claim. "This could work," Emma said, holding up the paper with cautious optimism. "It shows the intent to transfer ownership, even if it wasn't finalized." Ethan's eyes lit up with hope. "Then let's use it. Spirit deserves to stay here." The day of the meeting arrived, and the tension was thick in the air. Emma, Ethan, and the shelter's lawyer gathered in the office, presenting their case to Thomas Avery. They walked him through Spirit's journey, the evidence they had uncovered, and the undeniable bond that had formed between Spirit and Ethan. Thomas listened carefully, his expression unreadable as he flipped through the paperwork. After a long pause, he stood and smoothed his suit. "This is compelling," he admitted. "I'll need to consult with the estate, but I believe we can come to an agreement." As Thomas left the office, Ethan let out a shaky breath. "Do you think it'll be enough?" he asked Emma, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "We've done everything we can. Now we wait." That evening, Ethan sat in Spirit's kennel, watching him rest peacefully under the fading light. "No matter what happens," he said softly, "you've changed my life, and I'll fight for you until the very end." Spirit lifted his head, his dark eyes meeting Ethan's. In that gaze, Ethan saw something he recognized: strength, trust, and a quiet confidence that they could overcome anything together. The shelter hummed with nervous anticipation in the days that followed, each moment stretching into eternity. Spirit continued to thrive under Ethan's watchful care, but the looming uncertainty cast a heavy shadow over them all. The staff worked with quiet resolve, their shared hope resting on Emma and Ethan's efforts to keep Spirit where he belonged. The morning of Thomas's return arrived, and the tension was palpable. Emma had spent late nights combing through records and preparing for what felt like the shelter's most critical battle yet. Ethan, on the other hand, stayed close to Spirit, finding solace in their bond and drawing strength from the dog's steady presence. As the first rays of sunlight stretched across the yard, Ethan stood by Spirit's kennel, his hand resting on the shepherd's broad head. The golden morning light bathed the shelter, a stark contrast to the storm of emotions brewing in his chest. "No matter what happens today," he whispered, "I'll fight for you. I won't let them take you." Spirit responded with a soft huff, his ears flicking toward Ethan's voice. Over the past weeks, their connection had grown stronger, and Spirit seemed to sense the weight of the moment. His once dull coat now gleamed in the sunlight, a symbol of his incredible recovery. Today, they would find out if that recovery could continue in the place they both called home. Thomas arrived promptly at 9, his polished demeanor as sharp as ever. Accompanying him was a stern-looking woman with a clipboard and an air of quiet authority, the estate's representative. Emma met them at the entrance, her face composed but filled with quiet determination. "Thank you for coming," she said, gesturing toward the office. "Shall we discuss this inside?" Thomas nodded, but his eyes drifted toward the paddock where Spirit stood tall, his head high as if he somehow understood the importance of the moment. "He looks well," Thomas observed. "It's clear you've taken good care of him." Ethan, standing nearby, could barely contain his frustration. "We've done more than just take care of him," he said, his voice laced with emotion. "We've saved him. Spirit isn't just property. You can't reduce him to a piece of paper." Thomas met his gaze with an unreadable expression. "I understand your passion, Mr. Whitaker," he said evenly. "But this is a legal matter. Unfortunately, emotions don't change that." Inside the office, Emma calmly laid out their case. She began by presenting Spirit's documented history at the sanctuary, his care, rehabilitation, and progress. Then, with careful precision, she unveiled the transfer document she had uncovered, pointing out the original owner's intent to relinquish Spirit to the sanctuary. This document, while incomplete, clearly demonstrates the intention to transfer ownership, Emma explained, her voice steady. "It proves Spirit was meant to stay here." The estate's representative studied the paperwork closely, her brow furrowed in thought. "It's compelling," she admitted. "However, the lack of official filing leaves some room for legal interpretation." Thomas leaned back in his chair, tapping his fingers lightly against the table. His gaze shifted between Emma and Ethan before he finally spoke. "I believe we can resolve this without further conflict," he said. "The estate has no interest in removing Spirit from a place where he's clearly thriving. Perhaps we can formalize his transfer to the sanctuary." A collective sigh of relief filled the room. Ethan exhaled shakily, his shoulders finally relaxing as the tension melted away. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Thank you for giving him the chance to stay." Emma smiled, a triumphant gleam in her eyes. "We'll do whatever it takes to ensure Spirit's continued care." As the paperwork was finalized, Ethan returned to Spirit's paddock, eager to share the good news. The German shepherd met him with an eager wag of his tail. His ears perked up, sensing the shift in the air. "You're staying, buddy?" Ethan whispered, his voice trembling with emotion. "You're safe. We're safe." Spirit lifted his head, his eyes bright with recognition. For the first time in weeks, he took off across the yard, his powerful legs carrying him with renewed confidence and vigor. Ethan watched, his heart swelling with pride and gratitude. That evening, the shelter celebrated Spirit's victory. The staff gathered around his enclosure, watching with quiet awe as he moved freely, his spirit fully restored. Ethan stood by the fence, a content smile on his face, reflecting on the journey they had taken together. "You fought for him," Emma said softly, joining him. "And in doing so, you reminded all of us why we do this." Ethan nodded, his eyes never leaving Spirit. "He's more than a dog. He's family." As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the shelter in hues of gold and purple, Spirit stood tall at the top of the hill, his silhouette framed against the fading light. In his stance, there was a quiet strength, a testament to the resilience that had carried him through. For Ethan, it was a moment he would cherish forever, a powerful reminder of the deep connections we forge and the lengths we go to for those we love. With the ordeal behind them, the sanctuary settled into a new rhythm. The staff, rejuvenated by Spirit's story, approached their work with renewed passion. Spirit had become a symbol of resilience, not just for the shelter, but for everyone who witnessed his transformation. The once broken German shepherd now roamed the yard with confidence, his coat shining and his eyes full of life. Ethan, having found a sense of belonging, decided to extend his stay indefinitely. The shelter had become more than just a place of work. It was home, a place where he felt connected not only to Spirit but to a community of people who shared his love for animals. His days were filled with purpose, working alongside Emma and Cole, caring for the dogs and mentoring new volunteers. One afternoon, as Ethan brushed Spirit's thick coat, Emma approached with a warm smile. "He's looking incredible," she said, watching the dog with admiration. Ethan nodded, running the brush over Spirit's fur in steady, rhythmic strokes. "It's hard to believe he's the same dog," he said, a smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "It's like he's come back to life." Emma leaned against the fence, watching Spirit graze peacefully. "You gave him something we couldn't," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "You gave him a reason to fight." Word of Spirit's remarkable journey quickly spread, turning the shelter into a beacon of hope for rescued animals. Visitors arrived from all over, eager to meet the legendary German Shepherd who had defied the odds. Emma and Ethan worked together to share his story through social media and community events, using his resilience to advocate for the rescue and rehabilitation of other animals in need. Spirit's newfound fame brought an outpouring of support. Donations poured in, volunteers signed up, and the shelter was able to expand its facilities, providing care for even more dogs in desperate need of a second chance. One afternoon, a family arrived with their young daughter, her eyes filled with excitement and nervous anticipation. Her parents explained how Spirit's journey had given her hope during a long and difficult illness. "She wants to meet the dog who never gave up," her mother said, emotion shining in her eyes. Ethan knelt down beside the girl, offering an encouraging smile before leading her to Spirit's kennel. The German Shepherd stood calmly, his eyes gentle and wise. As the little girl reached out a trembling hand, Spirit slowly stepped forward, pressing his muzzle softly against her palm. The girl's giggle rang through the air, pure and full of joy. Her parents wiped away tears, overwhelmed by the quiet connection unfolding before them. "He has a way of knowing when someone needs him," Ethan whispered, watching Spirit's intuitive response. Emma stood nearby, her heart swelling as she observed the moment. Spirit's story wasn't just about survival, it was about hope, the kind that spreads, touching lives in ways they never expected. As the months passed, Ethan found himself reflecting on how much Spirit had changed his own life. The dog had taught him invaluable lessons about resilience, trust, and the profound power of connection. Spirit wasn't just a pet. He was a partner, a friend, and a constant reminder of the importance of fighting for what truly matters. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, bathing the shelter in warm hues, Ethan sat outside Spirit's kennel, watching him rest under the fading light. He reached out and ran a hand gently through Spirit's fur. "You saved me too, you know," he said softly. "I thought I was here to help you, but you've given me more than I could ever repay." Spirit lifted his head, his dark eyes locking onto Ethan's. In that moment, no words were needed. Their bond spoke volumes, a connection forged in struggle and strengthened by love. The shelter continued to flourish, its yards filled with dogs and people alike, each with their own stories of healing and transformation. Through it all, Spirit remained at the heart of the shelter, a living testament to the power of compassion and the unbreakable bond between humans and animals. As the seasons changed and new challenges arose, Ethan realized one undeniable truth. Spirit's journey was never just about survival. It was about purpose, connection, and inspiring others to believe that even in the darkest times, hope can always be found. If Spirit's story has inspired you, remember that courage and compassion can overcome any obstacle. Subscribe to our channel, like this video, and share it with someone who loves uplifting stories. Together, we can spread messages of hope and resilience, one story at a time.